I'm really here to talk about the fact that while November is important, and it is, it's after November that's the most important of all, for a host of reasons. The theme for my speech today is akin to what Churchill said. This is not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning. Those words were never more true than they are today, because we are going to win in November. Of that I have no doubt. And I say that not because of any work that Dave Schwartz might be doing, or his colleague Phil Kerpen, who's one of my good friends in D.C., the work that I might be doing at the Institute for Liberty, www.instituteforliberty.org. Thank you, shameless. But it's because of the work all of you are doing. See, that's the nature of this movement, why it's been so important. I had the rare privilege over the weekend, and why I was so prepared for when our friends from the other side came in today. It's because I'd spent part of Saturday debating with Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. A rare opportunity indeed. And so this worldview that they share, and they all share the same worldview, that America is a force of evil on the face of the earth, that American exceptionalism is dead, that America is an imperialist nation, that capitalism has killed more people than it's saved, all of which we know it to be hogwash. That's the worldview that they share in common. And so I was very prepared coming in today, and what struck me, and one of the points that I made in this discussion, you see, there were a number of high school kids at this event, and they asked me, well, where did the Tea Party movement come from? What are the 5 most important issues? Isn't this all just a reaction to President Obama? And I said, no. We've all been angry about these issues for a very long time. We've been angry about these issues since before 2006, when a lot of folks, you'll remember, well, 2006, then we'll talk about 2008, when Republicans stopped acting like Republicans and were building bridges to nowhere, and were being indicted and convicted on all sorts of corruption, stemming largely from the expansion of government that they promised wouldn't happen. And what did we do as a people? We threw these folks out. Now, we only were faced with 2 choices at the time. And so we threw one set of guys out, and unfortunately the guys who came in, who were elected largely as conservatives, this is one of the great myths about the '06 elections, was it was largely blue dogs, like a blue dog who I won't mention today, because this is not about him or our guy, or him or the guy in the nice yellow shirts that we all like here on the shore. And here on the shore, we all like this guy. It's not about those two. It's about the trends in America and what happened, what has happened, and what has continued to happen. Anyway, so we were angry then. We wanted change. But the change that we got isn't the change that we were demanding, was it? Not at all. Because even the most conservative blue dog Democrat, and I will mention the guy who represents here right now is not, even as far as blue dog Democrats go, is not the most conservative blue dog Democrat. There are blue dog Democrats more conservative. And so in 2008, when we were all talking about this mess, I was one of the folks who said, listen, this guy can talk about how he's going to be an independent conservative in the mold of Wayne Gilchrist, who we all dumped, as I recall, because he wasn't conservative. We didn't know the half of it, obviously, now, given what we know now. But the best we can ever hope for from this guy is around a mid-80% voting record, 15% voting with the Republicans, voting with, at the time, the forces of limited government, free markets, and individual rights. And sure enough, that's exactly what we got. Because the most conservative blue dog Democrat still votes with Nancy Pelosi 80% of the time. That's unacceptable by all measures of what we're hoping to achieve. So what happens is, unfortunately, we get a blue dog gets elected this last time around who votes with Nancy Pelosi, what, 83, 84, 85% of the time. I don't remember what it is. 85% of the time. It could be 60% of the time, and as my colleague Carrie Houston says, listen, halfway towards socialism is much too far. Still too far. It doesn't matter. Here's a guy, I promised I wouldn't do this, but I will do this. I will. A guy who said last year at a town hall meeting, this is the guy who yelled at a 20-something because he didn't want to buy insurance for himself. Yelled at him. I mean, you want to talk about arrogance in office. What this is all about really is arrogance in office. We were not as rude as these people were today. Anyway, so I was at a town hall meeting being put on by our incumbent congressman on the Upper Shore. And this gentleman explained his vote on cap and trade. And I got to tell you, friends, you know, the issue of jobs in the economy and small business is very near and dear to my heart. That's what I do for a living. And so for this guy to get out there and explain, I voted for cap and trade because otherwise the EPA was going to regulate. I said, okay, that's really interesting, Congressman, but you're a member of Congress. You don't want EPA to regulate something. All you have to do is pass a law that says EPA can't regulate it. He said, I can? I have it on video. I can? You're a lawyer, right? I mean, you went to law school. Did you miss law school on the day they taught constitutional law? I was outraged. But did I get up there and get all in his grill? I'm sorry to use it. Get all in his face and start harassing him? Congressman, how come you're offshoring jobs? No, I didn't do that. No, we had better things in mind, didn't we? We banded together. We focused on the issues. And that's where we are today, a month out from truly the most important election in 70 years. But two things are going to happen. Number one, the administration is immediately going to move. The administration is immediately going to move to trying to enact all of the worst parts of their agenda through the regulatory process. And I'm going to digress for a moment and talk about that, because I want to just set the stage. I live my life as a regulatory geek. It's something I'm very proud of, actually. You know, most folks focus on Congress and Capitol Hill. I focus on the executive branch, because that's where all the magic happens. What do I mean by magic? Congress passes the Clean Water Act in 1972. It says you can't pollute a navigable water of the United States. We all know what a navigable water of the United States is. The Chesapeake, the Choptank, what have you. But after 30 years through the regulatory process, the magic of the regulatory process, all of a sudden a dry patch of the desert sands in the high desert of Nevada becomes a navigable water of the United States. And I got to tell you, this Congress wanted to change that. They wanted to just make it any water of the United States. They wanted to take navigable out. But that's what regulations do. And when I first took my job as a guy fighting regulations, the regulatory state was around $800 billion a year. All right? It costs small businesses. And when I talk about small business, I mean businesses with 20 employees or less. The businesses most of you, if not all of you, are associated with here in Wicomico County. It costs those small businesses about $7,000 per employee per year in federal regulatory costs. And in 2005, that number stood at $7,700 per employee per year. And up until last week, I've been thinking that maybe under the new regime, the Democratic Congress and the President, the Democratic President, that number would have gone up, instead of 20%, maybe 15 or 10%. Instead of 10%, maybe 15, maybe 20% increase. So it was $7,700 per employee per year in 2005. I thought maybe by 2010, that cost would be somewhere around $9,000, maybe $9,500 per employee per year. And just so you keep that in mind, for an average business with 10 employees, that's a $95,000 bite you take. That's a FIG, those of you who know mob terms. That's a debt you owe the federal government every year before profits. I mean, that's your sunk costs. $95,000. Last week, I go to a meeting at the SBA, which was supposed to be a regulatory flexibility, and in which I heard Mary Landrieu, who hopefully will be voted out of office, Mary Landrieu gabbing on and on about SBA loan guarantees that nobody cares about, because they don't work, they've never worked. And I'm looking down, and I see a press release, because the SBA has just done their every 5-year report on the size of the regulatory state and the impact of regulation on small business. And I see $1.75 trillion. That's right. It now costs your small businesses with fewer than 20 employees $10,600 per employee per year. And I sat there, and Mary Landry's speaking, and I let out holy S. I did not censor myself. It was a very gut reaction. We are now at, if you have 10 employees, $106,000 that goes out the door every year. And to me, it's no wonder that stimulus will not work. I mean, we know implicitly, right? We know implicitly Keynesian economics doesn't work. You can't take water from one side of a pond, dip a bucket into one side of a pond, bring the water over the other side of the pond, throw it back in, and think you stimulated anything when the pond's drying up. You haven't done a damn thing. We know that. But it certainly doesn't work if there's somebody upstream who has dammed the thing up and keeps building a bigger dam, right? That's what we've done. So we could be spending stimulus money until we're blue in the face, which we have, and it's never going to amount to a $1.75 trillion regulatory cost, a cost that has gone up by $700 billion since Barack Obama took office. I left that part out, sorry. It was 1.1, just around 1.1 trillion when he took office. In the last 18 months it's accelerated, which means on that growth curve, before this term is out, if we do not do anything about it, we're looking at a $2.5 to $3 trillion regulatory state in an economy that is only $14 trillion in size. And I'm sorry, I know that I've thrown numbers at you, but this is staggering stuff. So one of the things that we do, one of the things that I work with AFP on, is reconnecting individuals with that regulatory state. We got all sorts of tactics. I mean, stuff that will make our offshore birds friends reel away. I mean, one of the things we're talking about doing is when a regulator at EPA does something profoundly stupid, we're going to text message to 100,000 people that regulator's office phone number. Call them up, ring them up. How can you do something so stupid? What are you thinking? Because I think that sort of check on power is important. We're going to encourage people to file comments. We've already done this. We filed 50,000 comments on offshore drilling, or had 50,000 individuals file comments on offshore drilling. One of the things that our friend Chuck couldn't quite seem to figure out if he was talking about offshoring jobs or offshore drilling. And I got to tell you something, Chuck. When you get rid of offshore drilling, it means that you've offshored all of our oil jobs. They're gonna go to China, which doesn't give a rat's turd about the environment in America. They're already doing it.
They just went to Cuba.
I'm sorry, what?
They just went to Cuba.
That's right, they did. And so there's that aspect of it. We have to focus on the regulatory state. The other part of it is to call our members of Congress and keep them accountable to the promises that they make. You're concerned about something that Andy Harris is going to do? Call him. You know, we got to keep calling Barbara Mikulski. I mean, let's assume for a moment that Eric Wargotz wins the Senate race. You're going to have to call Eric Wargotz constantly. And at the local level, you're going to have to do the same thing. I mean, really, we've got good candidates coming out of here going to the House of Delegates and going to the Senate, but we've got to hold them accountable. And I want you to make an additional promise to me that when the legislative session happens, that you all promise to at least go up to Annapolis once and testify on something of import to you. This is the easiest state in the world, if you can believe it. As crazy as everything else is, it's the easiest state in the world for people to testify on bills of import. And those who don't testify, the groups that don't testify, they're the ones who get hammered on by the size and scope of this government. I mean, I didn't even get into, I won't get into what's happening at the state level. This is not the beginning of the end, my friends. I wish it were the case. But this is the end of the beginning. And it is only so because of the hard work that you all have done. And we will see it through to the end because of the hard work you all are going to do. I want to thank you all for doing that, and thank you for having me today.